From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Sonia Gray. We begin in Turkey, where Recep Tayyip Erdogan has been sworn in as the 14th president of the country. He begins his new 5-year term with more executive powers under the new presidential system. He took the oath in the parliament in Ankara and promised peace and unity for the country in his inauguration speech. Later in the day, he is expected to announce his 16 cabinet members. The introduction of the new presidential system is seen as the biggest overhaul of governance since the Turkish Republic was established in 1932 after the end of the Ottoman Empire.
As president, I swear not to deviate from the ideal, according to which everyone is entitled to enjoy human rights and fundamental freedoms, according to the notion of peace and prosperity in society, national solidarity and justice. To remain loyal to the Constitution, the supremacy of law, democracy, Atatürk's principles and reforms, and the principle of the secular republic. To protect the existence and independence of the state, the indivisible integrity of the country and the nation, and the absolute sovereignty of the nation.
After taking the oath, Erdogan paid tribute to Mustafa Kemal Atatürk at the Anıt Kabir Mausoleum in Ankara. Atatürk is seen as the founding father of the modern Republic of Turkey. Erdogan has also always hailed Atatürk's contribution as the most important influence on contemporary Turkey. And after his homage to Atatürk, he went to the presidential palace in Ankara to begin an official ceremony with his wife Emine Erdogan. He was welcomed by at least 7,000 guests. 22 heads of states attended the ceremony, including Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Erdogan addressed the crowd by saying that today he begins a new journey for his country and the rest of the world.
We will use this opportunity in the best way possible with a strong parliament, strong government, and for a strong Turkey. Our countries may have different names, but they have similar issues. At a time when we are facing terror attacks, our response to this scenario, to this plan, was given through our Rabia, a single nation, single flag, single homeland, and single country.
One of his major announcements as the new president was to end the state of emergency, which remained in effect since July 2016 after a failed coup to overthrow him. The other priorities of his administration is the revamp of the economy and improving national security. The new president also said that safeguarding the country from the conflicts in Syria and Iraq is also a very important issue on his agenda. Erdogan is also expected to continue his efforts to see Turkey join the European Union. The former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has been granted the condition of political prisoner by the International Human Rights Foundation. According to the NGO, Lula is a prisoner of conscience under arbitrary arrest. The organization said Lula's case lacks genuine evidence of responsibility and guarantees for his defense. It violates due process and has revealed the animosity on the part of the trial judges against the accused. Now, Lula supporters have been protesting angrily after the head of a regional court overturned an earlier decision to release him from jail. The legal debate raged throughout the day on Sunday. Our Mia Alberti has more on the back and forth that almost saw Lula freed.
A legal battle never seen before. For more than 7 hours, 2 judges of the 4th Regional Federal Court in Brazil went back and forth, debating whether or not to release former Brazilian President Lula da Silva from jail. But in the end, the president of the court, Thomson Flores, intervened and decided that the former president would remain in custody. Lula supporters have called the decision an attack on Brazil's constitution.
There is so much maneuvering for Lula to stay in prison. Why does Lula need to be in prison when he has the right to be released? Why do we see these administrative moves that are not legal? This is embarrassing for Brazil in the face of the world.
Lula's habeas corpus was first granted by Judge Rogério Favreto early Sunday. He argued that Lula's imprisonment was keeping him from participating in the current electoral campaign. Then, federal judge Sérgio Moro, who first prosecuted Lula as part of the car wash operation, blocked the decision. But Moro was actually on vacation at the time and so had no authority over the case. So then Favreto ordered Lula's release again. And again, it was blocked. This time by Judge Gebra Neto, in charge of Lula's case in the regional court. He said that he had legal authority over the case. Favreto disagreed and called the authority back to him, and Lula's release was ordered for the third time. Finally, the president of the regional court decided Lula would remain in jail. He said the argument regarding the electoral campaign wasn't relevant to authorize his release. An end to the hopes of hundreds of Lula supporters who rallied across the country, but the beginning of a legal hangover within the Brazilian judicial system, says top lawyer Marco Aurélio.
Brazil is living a sad day in the history of its democracy. Unfortunately, our country is moving fast towards a state of exception, and the juristic community is already there. Unfortunately, judicial activism is an embarrassing reality in our country.
A day that won't be easily forgotten in Brazil after it revealed the frailties of a system that should be trustworthy. Lula is still in jail, serving a 12-year sentence for corruption and money laundering. And although his opponents believe he should stay there, his legal team is working round the clock to release him in hopes that he can still run for the presidential elections in October. This is Mia Alberti, Telesur in São Paulo.
The congressman supporting Lula criticized the judge's decision and the police for refusing to free the former president. Hundreds of Lula supporters took to the streets of Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro to demand the political leader's release from prison. Others joined the protest near the federal police headquarters in Curitiba and also outside the Steelworkers Union in São Bernardo do Campo to demand his freedom.
It's a tragedy. It's a real breach of a decision of a habeas corpus from a judge who has not been respected in Brazil. It's very serious. We are stunned, very amazed at what is happening in our country right now. It's a major attack on democratic freedoms.
I don't believe much in justice because they make fun of us. I have more hopes in the mobilization that will take place tomorrow. Maybe the judicial system will understand that justice is for the people and that Lula is part of the people. And the people say it's unfair what they're doing to him. It's unfair to the working class who has no candidate to vote for.
A two-day general strike is starting in Haiti after a weekend of violent protests against a proposed fuel price hike. Looting broke out in the heart of the capital of Port-au-Prince as cars and containers were burnt. Protesters clashed with the police, who used tear gas against them. Despite the government's withdrawal of its plans, the protesters are demanding the removal of President Jovenel Moïse. And flights at the Toussaint Louverture International Airport in Port-au-Prince were grounded by the Haitian government on Sunday. Dozens of travelers were left stranded in the terminal, but according to local media, at least 3 of the cancelled flights finally took off in the evening en route to the United States. And CARICOM has issued a statement saying it is deeply concerned about the violent protests in Haiti. In a statement on behalf of all members, the Prime Minister of Jamaica and the current chair of CARICOM, Andrew Holness, wrote that the community deplores the loss of life, property and the damage to the infrastructure and calls for restraint and an end to protests and the violence. Thousands took to the street in Nicaragua to demand peace and the end of violence caused by certain opposition groups since April 18th.
Families and people of all ages raised red and black as well as blue and white flags as they march for peace.
We want a peaceful country where the rich and the poor can share. Nicaragua belongs to everyone.
Messages of love, peace, and nonviolence were spread by demonstrators who also sang songs in support of Sandinista ideals.
I'm here because I support peace and reconciliation. We want to live in a safe country where our children can grow. We don't want this uncertainty, this insecurity. It's absurd.
President Daniel Ortega surprised demonstrators with his presence. He arrived to support the thousands of Nicaraguans that march in favor of peace and the Sandinista Front. He reminded everyone that the people are the ones in charge.
The coup plotters want power. They should work to win the vote of the people. We shall see if the people vote for them after having provoked so much violence. Time will come for elections, as the law mandates. Everything comes in its time.
Ortega also said that those areas that the opposition and those complicit in the media call peaceful protest areas have been turned into torture and terrorism centers, promoting hate and serious crimes.
Murderers are those who finance and encourage these crimes. Murderers who must stop these crimes at once.
The Episcopal Conference has called for the national dialogue to restart on Monday at 10 a.m. local time.
Meanwhile, the Nicaraguan opposition have called for a national strike this coming Friday. Students, businessmen, and the Civic Alliance will first march on Thursday to ask for the resignation of President Daniel Ortega and his wife and Vice President Rosario Murillo before the general strike. The call comes after Ortega ruled out the elections, a demand made by the opposition to resume the dialogue with the government. The violence has left 205 people dead since April, according to figures from the Commission for Truth, Peace and Justice.
On Friday, we will hold a national strike. We have made a call in consensus with the private sector and other sectors within the Civic Alliance to carry out a national strike for 24 hours.
We are asking companies, asking the entire private sector, all the small, medium and large businesses of the country to close on July 13th.
We're going to take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
Cambiará la estrategia fallida de combate a la inseguridad y a la violencia. Más que el uso de la fuerza, atenderemos las causas que originan la inseguridad y la violencia. Estoy convencido de que la forma más eficaz y más humana de enfrentar estos males exige necesariamente del combate a la desigualdad y a la pobreza.
Entrando él rápidamente va a tomar decisiones muy fuertes, ¿no? Como esto de la iniciativa, como esto de la justicia transicional, como esto de las comisiones de la verdad, como esto de un proceso de pacificación del país, como esto de una recomposición social, un respeto a las instituciones.
Welcome back. People took to the streets in Panama to protest the 8.3% increase in the electricity bill announced by the government for the upcoming 6 months.
Panamanian citizens gather outside the Public Services Authority office to reject the 8.3% increase on electricity announced by the government of Juan Carlos Varela.
The government wants to increase the price of electricity. But why do citizens have to pay the consequences of other people's irresponsibility? We are fed up so many price hikes. Our wages are not enough.
The Public Services Authority says the increase was prompted by a delay in the creation of a third electric transmission line by disgraced construction company Odebrecht.
The government should pay for this. They have money to go to the World Cup, but not for electricity. They should pay out of their pocket.
Protesters remembered that the government justified the construction of hydroelectric plants in indigenous territories in order to make electricity cheaper.
What they want to do is pure business. The more hydroelectric plants they have, the more chances to sell energy. Don't forget there's an electric interconnectivity system established in Central America. So now they want to expand into South America. The country that has more energy sells it to others.
The increase has come alongside a new bill that imposes taxes on the use of solar panels. Some say this is meant to allow electrical companies to maintain a monopoly on the industry.
Obviously, companies do not want people to use solar panels because they hurt their business. What they want is to keep exploiting people, and so what we have to do is to take away their power. Us Panamanian citizens, workers and communities need to decide for ourselves and stop a criminal system.
Citizens say protests will go until the government repeals the increase, which is a consequence of the privatization of this public service back in the 90s.
In Colombia, an indigenous community delivered justice on 2 members of the National Liberation Army, or ELN. The community of Coloto in the southern department of Cauca sentenced each of them to 37 lashes and 8 years in prison. The guerrillas were accused of an attack using explosives and the abuse of the population. The indigenous authorities also seized a rifle, a grenade and other weapons, which were then destroyed at the community's assembly.
We don't want any armed groups within the territory. We have told them that. We have been clear. In the indigenous town of Coronito, we gave the guerrillas time to clear out of the territory so that they can leave. But no, they didn't do it, and instead of leaving, they bring more people.
The National Electoral Institute in Mexico has officially confirmed that left-wing leader Andrés Manuel López Obrador won the presidential election on July 1st as the counting of the ballots finally ended. The results gave López Obrador 53.19% of the votes, that is more than 30 million votes. The president-elect has said he will seek reconciliation amongst all Mexicans. Social movements have promised to support him, but they also demand that he keep the promises made during his campaign. And still in Mexico, a series of attacks at bars in the northern state of Nuevo León have left at least 12 people dead over the weekend. The authorities say 3 simultaneous attacks were carried out on Saturday night, and they were all related. The highest number of victims was at a bar in the city of Juarez, where 6 people were killed. The 2 other attacks were carried out in Guadalupe and Monterrey. 2017 was the deadliest year for Mexico, with more than 25,000 murders registered. Activists in the United States have been protesting against the detention of undocumented trans people and LGBTI immigrants, as they say they are doubly persecuted. Dozens gathered in front of the West County Detention Facility in Richmond, Virginia on Sunday to demand justice for trans, queer and non-binary migrants. Activists say LGBTI people face particularly brutal treatment in the U.S. system. They say trans women are sexually assaulted after being locked up with men for extended periods of time.
We are here because the LGBTQ community, who is an immigrant community, is doubly persecuted by the system. They not only fighting for staying alive in our countries of origin, but they also are coming to this country and being apprehended in places where they don't receive their proper medical attention or the attention they need because of their gender expression.
They're detained in terrible conditions and don't receive medical care, and there's been at least 1 case recently of a transgender woman, Roxana Hernandez, who died in detention, and she, like many others, have died of neglect from medical attention, and there's also a terrible epidemic of sexual assault against transgender detainees.
Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arias has signed an agreement with Ghana to suspend the use of visas in diplomatic and service passports. The agreement is aimed to promote exchanges between the two nations at the highest level. Arias is visiting several African countries to build South-South relations, a tour that so far has taken him to South Africa and Mozambique. Well, time now for another break, so join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
So she's basically said no hats, no shirts, no socks. We have two men who are her friends and right here in hats. We are the only black people out here, and as soon as we walked up, she had something to say. We have bothered no one, we have said anything to no one.
Welcome back. The British Foreign Minister Boris Johnson has resigned. Johnson was in favour of what's known as a hard Brexit, opposed to Prime Minister Theresa May's preference for a soft Brexit. May wants to keep the free trade area and some common rules with the European Union, which Johnson opposed. The resignation of the British Foreign Minister took place after the resignation of the Brexit Minister David Davis on Sunday. Despite the loss of her ministers, Prime Minister May continued to defend her Brexit plan in Parliament.
So the Cabinet agreed that we need to present the EU with a new model, evolving the position that I had set out in my Mansion House speech, so that we can accelerate negotiations over the summer, secure that new relationship in the autumn, pass the withdrawal and implementation bill and leave the European Union on the 29th of March 2019. Mr. Speaker, the friction-free movement of goods is the only way to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. And it is the only way to protect the uniquely integrated supply chains and just-in-time processes on which millions of jobs and livelihoods depend. So at the heart of our proposal is a UK-EU free trade area which will avoid the need for customs and regulatory checks at the border and protect those supply chains.
The leaders of Ethiopia and Eritrea have declared the end of war and agreed to re-establish trade and their diplomatic ties. In a landmark joint declaration of peace and friendship, the two neighbors have pledged to end the 1998 to 1999 border war that killed over 80,000 people. The announcement came after Eritrea's President Isaias Afwerki and Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed held a summit in Eritrea's capital as Asmara. In early June, Ethiopia announced it would honor all of the terms of the peace deal, suggesting the government might be ready to settle the border dispute. Eritrea responded positively. 4 more boys have been rescued from the flooded Tam Lung cave in Thailand on Monday, bringing the total rescue to 8. A fleet of ambulances and helicopters have been transferring the rescued boys to a hospital in Chiang Rai as rescue operations have been suspended for the day. 4 boys and their football coach remain in the cave where they've been trapped for more than 2 weeks. Earlier, the authorities said it would take up to 4 more days to rescue all of them. Floods in Japan have killed more than 100. Here's more on that and the other stories making headlines from around the world.
Over 100 people have been killed and dozens are still missing after unprecedented rains flooded many parts of western and central Japan. According to the meteorological department, since Thursday, the affected areas received 3 times the amount of usual rain, causing rivers to burst their banks and prompting landslides. The government has ordered that 2 million people be evacuated. Rescue operations are underway.
We have not been able to confirm the safety of quite a lot of people, and there are many who are stranded, facing the terror of impending flooding, and waiting for rescue. Our rescue operations are now a race against the clock.
UK police have launched a murder inquiry following the death of a 44-year-old British woman who was exposed to the Novichok nerve agent in Amesbury last week when she was found unconscious along with her partner in their home. Britain has once again accused Russia of the poisoning, as the nerve agent used on the 2 citizens is the same that was used on former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter in March. Afghan and US Special Forces have been conducting military operations to break the Islamic State group's stronghold in the province of Nangarhar in eastern Afghanistan. They have launched operations to clear the area of militants and enable civilians to return to their villages. The ongoing operation has killed more than 160 IS militants in recent days.
We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisyourtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Talis Your English, I'm Suni Gray. Thank you so much for watching.